Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. It is Wednesday, September 1st. So we are in September 2021. Glad you are with us. Tonight we are talking about the eviction moratorium. Where does that stand here in Davidson County and really all across the state of Tennessee? And tonight we have a panel discussion. We have 6 guests. That's right, 6 different guests will be on answering your questions, giving us information about various aspects of this. 3 guests in the first half hour, 3 guests in the second half hour. So let's introduce them now. Our first 3 guests, we have Judge Rachel Bell. She's a judge here in Davidson County. Lisa McCready, she's with the Metro Action Commission. And Ann Louise Worthen, she is with the Administrative Office of the Courts. They help put all this together. And I'm going to go back to you in a moment, Ann Louise. But Judge Bell, I want to ask you first, what are we seeing right now in Davidson County? Is there a moratorium on evictions, and what are you seeing in your courts?
Thank you, Ben, for having us, and thank you, Ann Louise Worthen, for putting this together with the Tennessee Administrative Office of Courts from the Supreme Court. What we're seeing here in the state of Tennessee, actually, since the 6th Circuit said that the CDC moratorium was no longer in effect, that affected the state of Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and us here in the state of Tennessee. All districts, Western, Eastern, and the Middle District. So what we're seeing now, since July 26th, actually, is that the Landlord-Tenant Act is in full effect with no protections for tenants dealing with filing a CDC moratorium or any other protections that were put in place that we did see last year and the first part of this year. So now we're really trying to work in partnership with the Metro Action Commission to help transfer cases to the Legacy Housing Resource Diversionary Court so that we can work towards keeping a roof over the tenants' heads, but also making sure that landlords are paid and compensated for individuals that are living in their properties.
So it's open season right now on evictions. I mean, evictions, there's no longer a moratorium. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I think there was a little bit of confusion because the federal government or the CDC had said that the eviction moratorium was going to stay in place until August. However, in the state of Tennessee, the Western District had removed its restrictions back early April. And then late part of April, early part of May. And then here in Nashville, Tennessee, the Western District, the Eastern District, and the Middle District of the state of Tennessee, because of the 6th Circuit opinion, it was Tiger Lily versus, the Tiger Lily opinion said that the 6th Circuit in all those states would no longer be able to have protections from the CDC moratorium. So that was July 26th, actually, when we found that out.
Right. Okay. Ann Louise Worthen with the Administrative Office of the Courts. Thank you for putting this together. Why do you think it's important to bring all of these stakeholders together? Why is it important to talk about this tonight?
Well, just as Judge Bell was explaining, there's a lot of confusion going on. There's billions of dollars coming in from the federal government across the country for emergency rental assistance, but people don't understand how to access it. You'll hear more about tonight. It's being handled differently in different counties in Middle Tennessee. So, for example, that's why we have Mr. Crady on and Judge Bell to talk about what's happening in Davidson County. And our second panelist will be able to talk about our surrounding counties and how you access it there. And then also, the moratorium didn't forgive rent. Rent is still due and landlords need to be made whole. But what we are trying to do is convene all the stakeholders to try to come to a resolution to make those landlords whole, but keep housing stability for individuals and families that were impacted by COVID-19. And then also sort of a win-win-win is to address any backlogs in our court system, because court never closed, but court changed a lot over COVID-19, and landlords weren't able to file evictions for a long time. So what we're hoping to do is to bring all of the stakeholders to the table to educate tenants and landlords about what they can do with this rental assistance. There's some confusion about what all can be paid. There's new federal guidelines that come down pretty frequently that expand or provide more information. And so we just want to make sure that everyone knows what the most current guidelines are, how to access the rental assistance programs in their area. And then also for if there's anyone who is unable to still ends up being evicted, but how to also provide those wraparound services for those individuals and families so this doesn't become a life-altering event in their lives.
We've heard, I mean, obviously this has been something that's been on the horizon. Now we're obviously here. The moratorium is over. We've heard there would be a flood of evictions, people really going into courts and seeking evictions and being evicted. You want to avoid that. You want to connect people that are having trouble paying their rent with resources so that we don't have to go through a bunch of evictions. And you want to protect landlords and tenants. Is that right?
Yes, that is exactly right. We want to, again, we know that landlords are also hurting. We've got smaller, mom and pop landlords who haven't been able to collect any rent for over a year now. So, we want to make them whole, keep stability in housing, and divert or avoid evictions when possible. There's going to be some that's not possible, and we understand that. But we've never had an influx of federal money on this issue before at this scale. And so it's important that we use it for what it's intended and to help Tennesseans as we're all navigating this crisis. And
Lisa McCready, and my next question, I'm going to go to Judge Bell next, but then I'm going to come back to you and ask about the money that's available here in Metro. But Judge Bell, I first want to ask you, what are we seeing right now? Is there a flood of evictions? Has there been this kind of pent-up demand for evictions, and now we're seeing lots of people go to court and trying to evict tenants, or what are you seeing?
Absolutely. Because the courts have opened back up, I know when the courts were closed, we were trying to figure out some virtual approaches to helping with the housing crisis and the eviction crisis that was going on. And landlords, like Anne Louise said, landlords want to be compensated for their property and, getting paid back the rent. But yes, the courts opened back up on March 15th. Where our civil courts were going back in the space for evictions. However, the CDC moratorium was in place, and so we had started the Legacy Housing Resource Diversionary Court to help divert those cases, transfer those cases to us to work to receive CARES grant funding at that time, and then also the United States ERAP funds that Metro Action Commission will be talking about, Lisa McCready, in a minute, on what was received from the federal government. But yes, landlords are filing evictions. Lawyers are coming to court that represent the landlords and wanting some results. However, we are seeing a great success in cases being transferred to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court because they have applied to receive the Emergency Rent Assistance Program funds that Metro Action Commission with their HOPE program is able to provide. So while there is an uptick, there's also a huge surge of people and landlords and tenants that are willing to try to resolve their issues, receive the funding, allow the tenant to still remain in their home, and the landlord to be able to receive arrearages up to 12 months back, 3 months going forward. And, in times where the landlord won't agree, tenant won't agree, we have the Tennessee ARD plan, which has been amazing. That court order that they entered back in December to allow us to order them to mediation to see if we can still try to get something resolved, make sure the tenant has a roof over their head, the landlord receives the funds, and we're able to move forward. So we're moving the needle every week. As Anne Louise said, there's new guidelines and new Treasury mandates and things that we can do. And we're working hard. And I want to give credit to my colleagues, the other 10 judges that serve with me that preside over our eviction dockets, as I do as well. Without their support and without their willingness to agree of the process we put in place here in the city of Nashville, we wouldn't be able to have this approach that we have. And so I want to say thank you to all of those judges that serve with me here in the General Sessions Court to work this program that we put in place with Metro Action Commission.
All right. Lisa McCready, how much rent assistance money is available here in Davidson County?
Yeah, so our initial allotment was $20.8 million, which on Monday we had officially expended or obligated all of that funding. So we're now going into our second round of funding, which is $9 million that will be for our nonprofits that we'll be working with in the city, as well as an additional $24 million that's coming through the state from Treasury. And we think that when all is said and done, there will be an additional allotment based upon the funding throughout the country that still may be available. Nashville or Davidson County has really come together to support families who are in this particular situation. The city has come together. I can't thank Judge Bell enough for her and her team, the judges who have gotten behind it, the landlords, even the attorneys that are really trying to help clients to understand the importance of going through the HOPE program and making these renters whole. And so in addition to catching residents up on their past due rent for as much as 12 months in arrears, because of the housing shortages here in our county, we're also paying forward 3 months. And so what that does is that it gives an additional breathing room. Many families have already returned to work. The children are back at school for the most part. And so life is kind of returning to normal, I guess the new normal, because I don't know that we'll ever go back to the way it was. But, you know, people are now moving around a little bit more. But it's likely that $20,000 in your account to catch up on past due rent as you are trying to move forward, that's not realistic for many families. And so this has been game changing for a lot. The additional monies that we're receiving, as Annalise said, you know, the Treasury is always looking and listening to those of us who are administering these funds to see where are the barriers for people to be able to apply for this money, because the intent is to help as many families as possible. So each time they come with the different changes, it helps us to serve even more families. I can't thank them enough for the written attestation, meaning that if you can't find your check stubs, you can't find some other documents, you can write, you know, do a written statement saying this is how much I made. So they're even trying to make sure that those barriers are removed. So I'm just very appreciative to just how that's working out and us being able to get that funding into the hands of the landlords.
You've been on this show before, and when you were on, it wasn't that long ago, you were talking about we have a bunch of money. We know there's a lot of need, but people don't know. We're having trouble getting this money distributed where it needs to go. It sounds like you are now getting it distributed. Is that right?
We are.
What has happened?
So two things are happening. Getting the applications to completion. There is a requirement with the amount of documents that that they have to have in order to apply to complete an application, both on the tenant and landlord side. So better coordination, I believe, with the tenants and landlords, with the courts, with the nonprofits, with the outreach that we've done in the community. So that has helped. The other piece is being able to do the written attestation, the written statements. Some people weren't able to find the things that they needed to find, the check stubs and other things, and just more awareness about, you know, what's going on and how to access this funding. So a lot of things have happened. The long hours, the extended hours, making sure we're even more accessible. The other piece is, we believe, is that the more and more information is getting out about the funding is not requiring social security numbers. And so many more residents who historically might not have applied for any type of government funding, they're finding out that, yes, this is inclusive of a lot more residents than previously. And so a lot of things going in the right direction. Again, the city has just come together in an unbelievable way to make sure that we're getting this funding out and that people know about it.
So I don't know who should answer this, but I guess let's say I'm somebody, I've struggled with my rent. Now, you know, COVID's still here. I need help now. Maybe I didn't need help 6 months ago, but I need help now for the last 3 months and going forward. And I'm about to be evicted. Or vice versa, a landlord who I guess is really struggling, and you know, I'm either a tenant or a landlord, and I've had problems for the last 3 months, and I'm worried about the next 3 months. Judge Bell, what about that? I'm about to be evicted. I haven't paid for 3 months. I'm before your court. What happens right now?
Well, that was a awesome question, but I want to make sure that I have the context. I think you asked two questions in one, but I'm going to answer them. Yes, okay. So if you're dealing with a situation and you're back up against the wall, you haven't been able to pay your rent as a tenant, and you do not have an eviction filed yet, please get in touch with Metro Action Commission immediately. Show up. Do not just call. Show up in person and tell them that you don't have an eviction yet filed. You don't have a detainer warrant. You don't have a court date yet. and you need to get assistance. If you're a tenant and you do have a detainer warrant and you have received it, make sure you come to court. Do not miss any of your court dates. I don't care if your grandmama, your best friend, your husband, your wife, your partner tell you, oh, you don't need to go to court. Go to court, okay? Please go to court. You are your best advocate. When you get there, we have a great team of people that will work with you. The judges, my colleagues, like I said, I give them so much credit for working the process. If they know that you have filed a Metro Action Commission application, they're automatically going to transfer you to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court, in which we have housing court navigators and a team of people that are working with you with Metro Action Commission to help you get off the cliff, as I call it. Landlord, if you haven't filed yet, please, please, please go to Metro Action Commission. Let them know that you want to start an application along with your tenant. Landlord, if you have filed, please, you come to court and tell the judge and the court that you want to transfer your case to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court. But the answer is Metro Action Commission. That's the answer. But the bottom line is, if you have a court case or anything pending in court, show up to court, transfer your case to the diversionary court named Legacy Housing Resource Diversionary Court, and I promise you we will take care of the situation from A to Z. We'll make sure it gets resolved, it gets settled, you get your payment, even making sure that we have an understanding with your lease agreement, the holdover, the month to month, whatever it is. Be patient with us, but it is working, and it's working well. But the answer to me is Metro Action Commission. So I'm gonna pass it to Lisa McCready.
Well, and Lisa, okay, I appreciate that. And I'm gonna go to break right after this, but really quickly, Lisa, if that means they should call you, Metro Action Commission, if they're struggling paying their rent, call you as soon as possible.
That is correct.
Is that right? As
soon as possible. And even if you've already been through the program, there's an opportunity for many to recertify to if you're still having struggles after you've received payment.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll start taking calls. If you have a question, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.